Welcome to the Journey of an Aesthete, a comprehensive examination of all things aesthetic, the arts, the humanities, and what it means to be human.
Dr. Philander.
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing? It's so great to connect with you finally.
I'm doing well, man. Just relaxing.
That's important. Well, welcome to our podcast, Journey of an Aesthete.
Thanks.
We're doing the show now, and you're on it. You're the guest.
All right. How you doing?
How you doing? You know, a lot of our guests, I'm going to speak a little bit up front, not too long, not too much. But a lot of our guests recently have been multi-talented. People that do the more than one thing.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And the other thing too is that some of my guests are people that I know personally, and then some guests I've never met in my life.
Okay.
And then there are folks like you who I guess are somewhere in the middle, because I was just I guess you sent me your music. That's how we met, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I sent one of my tracks to you. Mm-hmm.
And I was totally unprepared for that. I didn't know, I was just, I know you enjoy hearing about this. I didn't know what I was doing. And it just popped up in my chat box, I think, on the FB.
Oh, okay.
That's what I call it. I call it the FB. That sounds I like the way that sounds better than Facebook. So on the FB, right. I saw your little icon, and I saw this spiritual song,
right?
And it sounded great. I thought, well, this sounds like could almost be George Duke or something. I thought this is I wasn't expecting that at all. And so
all right.
I really enjoyed it. On the basis of that, I chatted with you and found out that you're in medicine and you've done all these things. So, typically on our show, we go into a little personal biography.
Okay.
And in your case, that's considerable. So do you mind starting from the beginning and explaining how you got into these two careers or three careers or everything you do?
Yeah, it started off in the church, of course. I was doing gospel in the 60s at Philander Baptist Church. It was on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And my family and I, we lived in the projects off of Diversity and Levitt.
Okay, I know.
And we would take like 5 or 6 buses just to get to church. And I was singing in the angelic choir, the youth choir, like 7 years old, 6-year-olds. And we would go to BTU every Sunday with my mother and father. Mm-hmm. And that's where it really started in the 60s. And then my brothers and I, we were taking music lessons at Lion and Healy's.
Oh,
yeah, that was downtown.
Oh, yeah.
My brother Dirk, he was a guitar player, and I would just, speculate. I would just say, I'd like to try to play that. And my other brothers, Chris and Cassandra, my sister, were playing the drums and violin respectively. So we would go down there at least twice a week down the Lion and Healy's downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And taking lessons, just basic music lessons, and then come back and sing in the choir every 3 days a week.
Wow.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah, it was they pounded us with religion, and they give you a lot of morals that we learned throughout life. Back in the day, we didn't know it was coming, but
right.
Now I apply all that I learned. Even as a 6-year-old, I remember stuff like that. The do's and don'ts and stuff like that my parents taught me.
Right.
Then probably, I think I was about 10 or 11. I was in 5th grade, and one of the things is I had cancer. It was a childhood cancer called Ewing sarcoma. And it was a very serious illness. I almost died. We had to have a major surgery, resection of my chest wall, and I went through chemotherapy and radiation for about 3 or 4 years. I think I was a sophomore when I was cured of cancer.
Wow.
That was at Loyola Hospital in Maywood. Dr. Harry Messmore was my hematologist, oncologist. And basically, I just went through the motions. When chemo was over, I went back out and played like the other kids after the chemo sessions. And I was real cured in 76. And at that time, when I was going through chemo and radiation and stuff like that, I would be in the basement at Loyola going through nuclear medicine. I would count the dots in the ceilings and try to apply music to the dots because there were squares. So I would try to apply it's just a way of escaping, the realities of the cancer that I had. I didn't know how serious it was, but it's very serious. So, 10, 11-year-old, I want to get out and play. So I played baseball on the baseball team. I played basketball. I knew like Doc Rivers and all them. We were all kids on the baseball team. And life goes on, So only a few of my friends knew that I had the surgery. Then when I got to high school, I was in a special ed gym because my mother made me wear a protective brace for my spine or whatever it was. And I was like, absolutely not, because I'm not going to, it's back in 1975, so I'm not going to be, biased or even discriminated because the other kids were normal and I wanted normalcy. Yeah. So I was still going to chemotherapy twice a week, then once a week at Loyola, then Rush. And then I got on the baseball team. I made the baseball team. I played basketball. Wow. I was in the martial arts. Everything my parents told me not to do. Of course, I'm a teenager. So I rebelled.
Do you mind if I'm sorry, hold that thought. I wanted to rewind just a little bit and ask you a little bit more questions because there's so much here you're getting into. I don't think you realize how interesting all this is to me. Now you're in Chicago at the peak of great American music, 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And so we have to talk about that at some point. But also, you're undergoing an experience many children and teens don't go through. And I imagine it's but you're also finding the ability to do martial arts and sports.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that process or that that's really something to me.
Well, I had a lot of brothers and siblings, and they were supportive. And some of my friends, my friend who just passed, Victor Harris, but they were surrounding us, and they really didn't know what was going on, so I hung with them. So we all grew up together as one, and they were really supportive. And then I was taking taekwondo with Kevin McClinton. He's deceased right now. He's passed on. He had brain cancer, but he would, we would go through the katas and we would do the sparring and all that. I had to wear my brace that protected my the chest area where I had the surgery, but I was just as good as anybody else. So, despite that, despite what was going on, I continued my martial arts, and then my sports that really helped me That was an escape route, playing baseball and basketball, because I would get out of chemo. And I really wanted to get outside because the chemo, you could taste the medication. It was vincristine and adriamycin. You could taste it once it hit your veins. And the nausea and the lightheadedness, the side effects that it really caused, I can really feel for my patients now because it's basically the same stuff, a lot less toxic, but it was a very toxic dose of medication, but it was there to kill the cancer, and that was the overall drive for it, the overall use for the chemo. So I did go through that.
When you went through this, were you getting inspired? I know you wanted to do music, but so were these experiences making you want to heal other people or think about medicine?
Go ahead. Well, I didn't know what a doctor was at that time. I think I was 11, and I know the guys in the white coat were the ones that were saving me, so I wanted to have my white coat. Marcus Welby, MD, used to come on. I said I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Doogie Howser, same thing.
Yeah.
But my teachers in high school and even in grade school, they kind of discouraged an African American to try to become a doctor because that's what it was. It was a doctor, and I didn't know the name as a physician or anything like that. They really discouraged me to do that, and my grade point average reflected that because I really wasn't interested in school, but I know I wanted, to become a physician or somebody that cares for people. Mm-hmm. So when I got a little older, I said, this is what I want to do. I went to Triton College. I was studying classical guitar, classical music with Dr. Schlabach and Dr. What is his name? I mean, the name's just like Michael Adamczyk. He was my classical guitar instructor. Mr. Salati was my music theory, sight singing, and ear training guy. And I still wanted to be a doctor, but I was doing music major, and I got a little older. Time went on. I got married, and the kids came, and I said, my grade point average finally started picking up. I went away to Wartburg College, came back because I couldn't afford it in Waverly, Iowa. I was pre-med there, and then I came back to Triton College.
Wow.
Then I became a registered nurse. I went through the program at the same time I was going to University of Illinois trying to, do pre-med. And then, like I said, I got married, and that slowed a lot of things down, almost to a stop. But then I started practicing nursing. So that led from one thing to another. But the drive was still there. I'm really driven because I started understanding what I really wanted to do in life.
So you were saying, getting back to, we winded a little bit. You said you were discouraged by society and by the injustices of society, prejudices.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And at the same time, there's probably was some things that were the opposite of that were inspirational to you.
Of course.
And especially in Chicago, because, music... Right. I'm wondering who you come across people like James Mack and Ramsey Lewis and that whole
Ramsey Lewis's father was our choir director at Friendship Baptist Church. It was Professor Ramsey Lewis or Dr. Ramsey Lewis. I forgot his real name, but it was Professor Ramsey Lewis. He was our choir director at Friendship. And like I said, I was just following suit. I would play the guitar every weekend or on Sundays at BTU. And first song I did learn on the acoustic, John Denver, Sunshine on My Shoulders.
That's a beautiful
I did
song.
My own version.
Love that song. I'd actually love to hear you do that right now. Not this second, but I imagine you do a good version of that. I'd like to hear that sometime.
I got a guitar somewhere. Yeah, I got a guitar somewhere in my apartment. John Denver, and I got into a rock band. We did Jimi Hendrix.
Wow.
Line, They Don't Know What I Know, all that stuff. And as I got a little older, I used to do Mr. Magic with a friend of mine, Jerry Winston. Right. It was at a couple of luau's, and we did the band thing, battle of the bands at Triton and stuff like that.
So you knew Ramsey Lewis's dad. So that's really that's the connection there in terms of music history in Chicago. Chicago.
He was a very stern gentleman. He was the choir director, and matter of fact, Ramsey looks just like him. I never got a chance to meet Ramsey himself, but Professor Lewis, Ramsey Lewis, was our choir director, and as life went on, I was doing some blues. So I met a gentleman named Billy Davenport. He was with the Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
Yep.
And I did some recording with him before he passed in '96.
Yeah.
And he was a humble gentleman. He was a phenomenal drummer, and I was honored to have recorded with him. I met Buddy Guy at Buddy Guy's Legend. Johnny Johnson, the keyboard player.
Yep.
Jimmy Vivino, he was one of the guitar players from the Conan show. A lot of the guys I ran across, during just their venues and me sitting in with them, I was excited, just to do some things with them. So
I guess you've had many lives because you were doing this, but also you found time to become a registered nurse, which is I have to say that's a really big deal. People out there don't scoff. I think becoming an RN is maybe about as hard as becoming a surgeon, and probably.
Well, I don't know if I was eccentric or anything, but it was really easy to become a registered nurse. I was a trauma nurse at the county. I was in the front room a lot back in 1991. I started at Loyola in ICU, CCU, and I got a year experience, came to the county to trauma. It was a horrible experience watching our young kids get, murdered and stuff like that. And we would be in the front room trying to save them. There was no avail. So I started writing about that experience. And then I was working with a guy named Derek Lyons, and I would just write stuff like I was tripping in the hood one day. My little brother's parents started to say, "Have to get me off the crack because my mind is going to snap." So I held our hand out anyway. It was a long and very tedious road to the rehab back and forth, but with little faith in love and with the man from up above. My little brother, sisters, don't use drugs. That was one of my songs.
Oh, wow.
Don't use coke, it'll make you choke. I did anti-gun tracks, anti-drug tracks that was featured on WGCI and stuff like that.
That's in Chicago. That's fantastic. That's just fantastic.
Yes,
this makes me so happy. You have no idea. I mean, do you mind if I ask you a technical question about some of these tracks? When you
go ahead. Yeah.
When you were going in the studio, what was typically your approach? Were you doing overdubbing, or what kind of instruments were you using, or that kind of thing?
With Don't Use Coke, there was a guy named Tony Bell with Kutchie. He was a reggae artist. So I networked with him back in 90, 88, whatever year it was. And I had the lyrics together by 1992, 93. So I went to his studio. He had like a 32-track studio with multi keyboards and layers and stuff like that. So what I did, I laid down the basic guitar, the basic lead guitar, and then I put the bass down. And then as far as the keys, we layered in different tracks. Mm-hmm. So when I approached the vocals, I did all the vocals on there. So I did the lead vocal. I was tripping in the hood one day, da-da-da-da. So my background would be, don't use coke, it'll make you choke. That's just the catch. That was the catch of the song. And so that was my chorus, but that was a subliminal as well. So I kept it going throughout the song. Mm-hmm. So then I said, drugs cause obsession, possession, violence, and grief. If you use a COCAINE system, you see my little brother, sisters go to school. Don't break the rules. We got to use the love instead of the drugs. And then I came in with a don't use drugs. Love thy neighbor. Mm-hmm. Keep the peace. Those are my little subliminals throughout the song. And they were different layers. It was like psychological because I had a degree in psychology. So I was using that as a positive subliminal to the track. And it's just amazing. My sister, my niece is 37, and she was 4 years old when I wrote that song. And she still remembers the lyrics.
Of course she does. Well, she's probably proud of you for writing it, and
yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because so you just slip that in there that you got a degree in psychology. Again, pretty amazing. Do you mind talking a little bit about how you fit that in there? And when that where was that? Where was that? It was in
that was psychology from Aurora University, 95, 94, because I went to graduate school after that, University of Illinois.
Okay.
Because I got the rejection letters, man. I got the rejection letters from medical school.
Yeah.
And it was several of them.
Yeah.
It don't happen overnight, but I got a few rejection letters. I scored well on my MCAT, but still, it's a standard that they have to, apply. It's a calculation.
Yeah.
And they weren't letting a lot of minorities in the medical programs at that time. So,
well, I think it's important that you're talking about this now and that history. And I think even my podcast is not a politics podcast. It's an arts podcast.
That's right.
On my podcast, everybody's issues come up, things come up. Their personal experience, where they're from, their spiritual beliefs, their education, or even in some cases, people. I had a coal miner on my show who was also a minister. I've had all kinds of guests, and every guest is unique. But there is this thing I've noticed of the multi-talented, and I definitely include you. I include you in that pantheon of the multi-talented. So when did you start utilizing? I guess you used your psychology, I guess, knowledge or learning in writing songs and song lyrics for kids, I think.
Yeah. One of the things is, since my background was in music and gospel, I used to make one of my first CDs came out in 1990. It was called A Message for You. So my wife and I were going through some things, and, I wrote a song for her called Come Back. And at that time, she came back, but she ultimately left.
It worked.
So,
it didn't work.
So it worked, but life happened. So we got divorced, and my kids were going through some things, and I made sure I stayed in their lives as best I can, through the court. So we did the best we can. They're grown now, but, we made a lot of positive efforts, and they, the hardest part was for the kids to suffer. And I never wanted that to happen. So I would always try to take them to baseball games. I had them on baseball teams. They played basketball. They were wrestlers. They played football. I was at, most of their 90% of their games and events like that to make sure I stayed positive, in their lives when they were young, because that does make a difference in their long-term outcomes with them. So they still remember me, and I still talk to them pretty much, on a daily basis. And, I'm a grandfather. My oldest son, he has a 4-year-old daughter that I see when I get a chance, but the weather's been bad and COVID's been bad. So,
did you want to talk a little bit about COVID? Well, before we get to COVID-19, do you mind going back into your memory bank and just for audiences that don't know, not everybody knows much about what nurses do or what people in a trauma unit have to experience. Do you mind?
Oh, yes.
Do you mind?
I don't mind at all.
Do you mind discussing, in more detail, kind of what a Saturday night in a city, or that kind of thing, or what the kind of thing you would be dealing with, and
okay, all right. Well, my background is ICU, ER, and trauma, so I'm like the type A personality, very, very, fast and aggressive. So I left Loyola in '91. I was a CCU nurse, straight from graduate, a new grad. I went there and got the experience on ventilators, patients coming out of open heart surgery, patients coming out of cath lab, having open heart surgery and stuff like that, and their lives depended on me.
Right.
So to me, I took the critical care route. I took the courses and everything. And after orientation, I would get my own patients, and their lives was in my hands. So I took that seriously, but not serious enough where it would overwhelm me, because I knew at the end of the day I was going home, and I wanted to make sure they were, still there alive and breathing when I left. That was my experience at Loyola in critical care. And it was a very fast-paced ICU, because we get fresh heart attacks, fresh MIs, fresh TPAs, those are thrombolytics that break up blood clots in your heart. We got the patients right out of surgery. So that was the type of, stress that was there. But I also exercised on a regular basis, and I made sure I wasn't stress-free. Even though I was going through a lot at home, I never brought it to work.
Interesting.
So when I became a trauma nurse, it was a totally different experience because they say you're not a good nurse, you're not a good trauma nurse. Well, why are you guys keeping me here if I'm not a good nurse? So those were some of the preceptors to get in your head to try to make you hustle more or take more of a patient load. It was basically a political thing at Cook County Hospital, but I learned my skills.
Wow.
So I know I'm going to learn how to watch this patient who has a thoracotomy or his chest cracked open in the front room. I know what I got to do to save this guy's life. When he comes back from surgery, he's going to be on a bunch of ventilators and machines and pacemakers and monitors with his, abdomen open, with Montgomery straps just holding his body together.
Yeah.
I know I have to be on top of that.
Sure.
So these were young Black and Latino kids that went through that. They were shot in the street. And when they got to us, man, we had to, put them back together. So it was aggressive from one patient to another. I worked night shift. It was very busy. Inner city on Friday nights, we get one patient and then another gunshot will come in with a head injury, shot to the head. They come back to surgery. We would have to have an intracranial monitor on them. They're on ventilators, and we would have to monitor them so intently because we'd have them on a mannitol drip that would cause the intracranial pressure, the pressure in your brain to go down. But if their pressure gets past a certain level, the mannitol that we give them wasn't working, so we would hyperventilate the patient to blow off the carbon dioxide, which causes vasodilation. We have to bring that down to save the patient's life so they won't stroke out or seize, and then that will cause their demise. So we had a lot of patients that died like that, but at the same time, we had a lot of patients that lived. So it was stressful, but I was used to it. We get the patients like that, and they say, Ratliff, you got these 3 beds, and I say, okay, and I'd set up my night. Yeah. And then I would have to do backup trauma or front room trauma after that. And then I did that for a while, and then I transferred to the emergency room. It was the same thing without the blood and guts.
Yeah.
Now,
of course, with the year we've all gone through, I guess the spotlight is on that kind of work and people that are involved in what you're describing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's what I was just going to say. And so how does it feel to see, I guess, I don't know, renewed attention or new attention on such the importance of these kinds of things. Are there any reflections that you have or things come to mind about where we are in COVID or anything, or politics
well, I've been an RN 30 years. Yeah. And trauma is still trauma. With the public health crisis of drugs, politics, gangs, and poverty, you have the same traumas, actually, because the kids nowadays, they really have to be educated. And first and foremost, they have to love themselves, man. That's the major thing you have to do. You got to love yourself. And a lot of these children don't understand love because they never seen love, because they have parents out there that are drug addicts, crackheads, and gangbangers that are bringing the money home. And the little sibling, the 7-year-old, doesn't know anything except what he's looking at. So one of the things that I did a few years back, I was in a program with Marsha Eglin. She's the founder of the Impact Family Center on the south side of Chicago. Oh. And I've heard some of my...
She's great.
Yes. Great. So I joined her team a couple years back, and I was teaching guitar lessons for about 2 years straight, in between going to medical school, stuff like that. Yeah. And I taught these children, never seen a guitar. Oh. Some of them were trying to do chords, never seen a guitar in their lives. So I taught about 35, 40 children how the sound of an acoustic guitar. I integrated it with my medicine. When I was training, I brought a stethoscope to the program, and I would have each one of the children strum the guitar 5 or 6 times, and I would have them put the stethoscope, for more acoustics, the stethoscope against the guitar, body of the guitar, so they can actually hear it resonating, the sound resonating to their hearts and to their minds, to listen how the strings sound on the guitar. So as I did that approach, I opened up the door now for these children to let their guards down because a lot of them were experienced some form of PTSD. You know, I'm not going to diagnose it because I'm not a psychiatrist, but they were going through a couple kids lost their siblings and gun shootings and stuff like that. So I would help them with the guitar, teach them each string at a time. I would put the notes on the board, how the chords made music in the general scale, C major scale, and how to apply that on the guitar. So at the end of maybe a month or two, every last one of those students know how to play the guitar, strum a song, which I taught them a basic song. And then we got a chance to be on Channel 7, ABC News, Channel 5, stuff like that. And it felt really good because this is something I did when I was a kid. You know, somebody helped me at Malcolm X College when I was 10, 11 years old, going to these Saturday community classes, right? And we would jump on a train and go to Malcolm X and learn how to play the guitar and the piano and stuff like that. So I was giving back, you know, free of charge. It was euphoria, man, because it didn't cost me anything, and it didn't cost them anything to learn that for life.
Yeah. That's really really beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Everybody needs an anchor in life. You, me, just everybody. Anchor made this whole show possible. I'm immensely grateful to them. You too can use Anchor to make your own shows and create your own vision. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Well, I guess going forward, I'm sure you look at the present and the future and those experiences. Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about where you see things? Well, both things now in terms of the future of, everyday people and maybe turning a corner and improvement, but also your own musical projects, because I know you have a new project, I think, with Indigo. Am I right about this? Or
yeah, I just did a recording with a gospel singer. He's pretty famous, Jesse Campbell.
Yep.
And I reached out to him a few years ago. He was pretty busy on tour, and his father, Bishop Willie Campbell, just passed a couple months ago. So he was in Chicago. I sent out my condolences, to the family and himself. Yeah. And I reached out to him. I said, Jesse, I'm working on this song. Mm-hmm. My father just died, like your father, several months ago. My father just passed. And I got to release this song, man. It's really eating up my soul. So I let him know what the song was about. It's a song called God, I'm Sorry.
Yeah.
And I was just letting him know,
That is the cut I heard. That's the cut that introduced me to you. If it weren't for that song, you and I would not be having this conversation right now. And you would not be a guest on my show. So like I say, God bless you. So it's that song has power. Anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah.
I wanted to just.
So, no, it's all good. I was working with a young lady named Chawana. She was supposed to be the lead singer of this song, and I informed her that I'm writing like a duet. Mm-hmm. So she got sick like the night before we went in the studio. So my producer, John King, he used to be with the Shy Lights for years. I believe the Shy Lights, Ohio players, one of them, the keyboard player. Oh. And he reached out to Indigo. He said, Phil, it's okay. I know a young lady. I said, John, but da-da-da-da. So I rewrote the song, and I sent the guitar on him. I sent the guitar to him as well. And then I met Indigo the following Wednesday, and she had it together. So she recorded her verse, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to make room, because when I wrote it, I had to make room for Jesse when he comes out to do his thing after he did his father's, celebration of life and stuff. Yeah. Yes, eulogy. So Jesse came out the following week, a couple of days after that, and he just killed it. I mean, they blended in perfectly. So it was a great connection. And when I wrote the song, I was singing from the heart, and I was writing from the heart, and they picked it up just like that. And it was just amazing how the songs picked up, and a lot of people are really touched by it. So I'm honored to have written that song with those guys.
Well, I'm one of them. So I want hopefully, and when we edit this episode, we're going to have that song up front.
That's perfect.
If you don't mind.
That's perfect.
I
don't mind at all.
Is there anything else about music you want to speak about in terms of musical style or blend of influences or anything that comes to mind?
Well, I like jazz. Like I like your style because when I studied classical and jazz at Triton, that's the style that you have. Mm-hmm. My style, I like George Benson, Leave It Now, and all them guys. I like their style, but on the guitar, I don't want to go as fast as they are because I want my stuff to come out.
Right.
Because I mix a lot of vocals in there, so I don't want to overdo guitar, overdo the music, So like simple music, and the message has to be strong.
Yep.
And I put a lot of subliminals in my song because, like I said with God, I'm sorry, I did not honor you. And then I said, touch me with your hand and heal me. That was in my song. So I want to put in my jazz. I want that kind of message to go through and resonate, throughout the song,
Well, you mentioned George Benson. I think the greatest band ever was his band of the 70s with Ronnie Foster.
Oh, yeah.
You know the band I'm talking about? Jorge Dalto, 2 keyboards. I love that. Anything with 2 piano players in it is okay by me. So,
They say the neon lights are bright on Broadway. Yeah. I remember when he first came out in 77, wasn't it?
Yep.
On Broadway? Yeah, I remember when he first came out. I was trying to play his song, and I didn't do it.
That's Weekend in L.A.
Yes, Weekend in L.A. That's right.
But I think that kind of music, I'm sure that's it. I can hear that's influenced you a little bit in terms of, the style and the sensibility.
Definitely. George Benson and I mean, as far as jazz, but I mean blues, like I said, B.B. King and all the other artists that, preceded me, I try to take a little bit of each one of their styles. And I'm not the new generation, but the guys that are doing music now, I don't really identify it as real music because there's a lot of technical, stuff like that with the beats and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And the young generation, my son is a sophomore in college. He's a football player.
Oh.
And he plays the guitar better than me. He's a first-chair trumpet player as well. And, he's come up in orchestras, through the church and the school, stuff like that. But I told him to put that in your back pocket, because you may need that one day. And he's, like I said, he plays trumpet, he plays piano, but put that in your pocket because you may have to apply that one day. And, lo and behold, he's playing for the other students at the school when he gets a chance. So I said, that might take off. But, music is evolving. Mm-hmm. One style 30 years ago is coming back again because they do a lot of sampling now, of other artists, So, but the root of the real music is, like yourself, man. You get up there, you could play that piano and you make it talk. Yeah. And I can feel what you're saying, I can feel what you're saying on the piano because it has a meaning.
A lot of it is just, practice and hard work and having good teachers, and is important.
Right. Definitely.
But I wanted to also get back to where you see hope. If you do see hope for kids and the things you're talking about,
I definitely see hope with, once this COVID gets by, because I got my vaccine a couple of weeks ago, once we can convince the people, to get the COVID vaccination, that'll open up a lot more things into normality. Mm. But as far as hope is concerned, like they got the Chicago schools closing and opening, stuff like that. Yeah. Hopefully that'll all resolve. But the children nowadays, they need mentors like yourself and myself to just keep them encouraged, because evil's going to always be around, but God always prevails, man. And I think that wholeheartedly because, that's one of the reasons I'm here. Yep. I could have died 48 years ago of cancer and I would have been a no name and nobody, but God was in my life, and pulled me through that, and now I'm saving lives, as an RN, and I just finished medical school, and I definitely going to make a contribution as a physician, if I continue with psychiatry or emergency medicine. I think I'm going to make a great contribution, to society to encourage these children, to keep on going, don't give up hope.
So you have some more stuff in front of you. It sounds like you have plans. Now it sounds like you have plans for changing your career.
Yes, I finished medical school a couple years back. We were supposed to have our graduation last year, and COVID stopped that. Wow. So right now I'm writing for my board.
But what a beautiful time to get that degree. I mean, there's a real almost a spiritual meaning to that, don't you think? A little bit.
I think so. With me, I'm getting up there. I'm in my 50s, and I just love life, man. I love life, and even as an RN, I just projected that onto my patients. I gave them hope. Even if they had cancer. One of my patients, I was crazy about her about 3 years ago at the county when I was a nurse at the county. And she was just joking with me, and I was really moved by her. And then the next week I came, one of the attendings that I was working with, she told me the patient passed that weekend. Mm-hmm. So, I felt really bad, but I felt good because I helped her make that transition because I gave her some encouragement and, and I talked to her from the heart, and that's a lot of people out there are in pain. You have to try to understand that. A lot of people are in pain, but you have to encourage them, that there's God and there's whatever piety you have, whatever religion you have, we respect that. Yeah. But I encourage them to look beyond, what's going on now. It's a brighter day. It's going to be a brighter day. So that's part of my philosophy, man. It's going to be a brighter day. So.
That makes me very happy to hear that because I trust you. I think I'm gonna go along with you. I'm gonna think that you're right about that.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else comes to your mind that you want to talk about that's on your urgent, or could be about anything, music, your life experience? Anything?
Well, one of my experience, I was a police officer as well for 15 years. I was a Bellwood cop. I went through the academy. All this was going on at once, so I said, may as well. I went through the academy, and I wanted to make a difference to the community.
Sure.
So I was a Bellwood police officer, and I was a basketball coach for the community with Chief Greg Moore. We did weekly, almost daily basketball tournaments on the basketball court. And then I went over to Memorial Park Police Department because we had a little more jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So as a part-timer, I couldn't be full-time because I was over 37. That was the cutoff. So I went to Moraine Valley for the police academy, did very well, got straight A's in the program. Yeah. And I came back to try to make a difference. And but policing's real too now, it's just like nursing, it's just like any field that has a socialization entity to it, because I was communicating with these children, to better themselves, and you saw me in uniform, but at the next day or the next night, I was at an armed robbery, and I was at a scene where there's a shooting or something like that, even though I was part-time, my life was on the line, but I still got that euphoria, man. I got that drive to do that. Yeah. And a lot of our officers were going through a lot of stress because it's an emotional thing, but I was stable, man. I had God, I didn't have no problem with it. And I would, talk to other officers to just keep them on the up and ups, because it was stressful. We had officers that died. We had officers that quit. We had officers that, unforeseen circumstances, but I would try to encourage them when I was there. And some of them are still my friends. A couple of the chief of police are still my friends, and they're following me now on my music and medicine journey. So
that's good.
That's great to see.
I'm sure you have some thoughts on the public conversation about police and police injustice and violence and all that.
Yeah, my not personalizing, but depersonalizing is one thing you learn as a police officer, because there's so many things. But the George Floyd incident really crushed me, because we did not learn that. That's not part of the gold standards or the formulations that we use as police officers to put your knee in somebody's neck. We do learn techniques to put your knee on their shoulder or their clavicle to hold them down, because that's a lever technique, like one of the just to keep them in position, and then you could cuff them and then you let them go. So that George Floyd thing was 100% wrong, and once you get them cuffed, end of story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that goes without saying. I mean that's a tragedy that's gonna be on our minds and hearts for a long time. Trying to
right. I witnessed the destruction, and like I said, the children nowadays in the city around the world don't know how to deal with situations like that. That was very traumatic. And that was the breaking point, because when I was a young kid in the 60s, Martin Luther King got killed. And I remember what happened to Chicago. I was 6 years old or 7 years old, and I remember the fires and stuff like that. And, the pain still lived through our parents. The pain still lived through our grandparents, because they were there witnessing what happened to this leader that was going to make a difference to the African American or people of color, the community at large. So when this happened, I understood why the people reacted that way. I didn't support what they did, but I definitely understood it. Because before I became a cop, I was called the N-word about 1,000 times by future colleagues, when I was a teenager. Yeah. And then I became a police officer. And then you would see behind the doors how they really felt. But I wasn't that N-word anymore. I was a police officer. So I'm on the same level. And that's why a lot of African Americans and Latinos fear the police, because behind the scenes, it's a totally different entity in the streets. Yeah. So now they have transparency. They have programs to de-escalate mental illness patients, because the officers or police officers used to shoot them and tase them, because it's called suicide by cop, where somebody might have a knife that has a psychiatric illness, depression, schizophrenia, anything, bipolar, and they're going through a crisis, and that the police officers were not trained to deal with that anywhere. So now they have ministers or priests on board. They have mental health teams on board to interact with these people to prevent officers from overreacting. Because what we're trained to do, and I got to be honest with you, Mitch, we're trained to kill. We're trained to shoot and kill. We're not trained to shoot and lame. A lot of people say you should shoot in the leg, you shoot in the arm. Well, if somebody has a knife or a gun and they make a furtive move, it's called, you have to do what you have to do to stop them or detain them with violence. And that's the unfortunate part.
I mean, it is unfortunate. I mean, I'm somebody who, I tend to be kind of I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say moderate, but I tend to see many sides of things.
Right.
I also understand, I had a conversation with the filmmaker Charles Burnett, who did To Sleep with Anger. Remember that movie?
Vaguely.
Yeah. I had a conversation with him about having to shoot movies in Watts in the 70s. He was shooting on location in Watts. And he really enjoyed that. But he says one thing he noticed was the prevalence of drugs. And he was convinced this was like an invading force. It didn't seem normal to him that these things were coming in. And he thought it was, he really took note of that in the interview when we talked to him. He said, this is being somebody's behind this, I guess is how he put it, or
Right. So one of the things with the drugs and stuff like that, since I was a shorty, drugs have been around. Now marijuana is legal, and that's how they, survive. I go through this every day when I come home from work. People are up and down Madison Avenue selling marijuana openly, now that it's legal, and they're still using the drugs. They're still using the heroin with fentanyl laced to it. Yeah. We're still getting 5 deaths a week or more. It's on the television. I think, and this is me personalizing, I think one of the reasons, that we do this is because there's no escape from the community that you're brought up in. But a lot of these kids have to get educated, and once Chicago public schools start opening up again, I think that's going to be a big deterrent. they were trying to vote the police officers out of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a bad decision only because the gangs are in there as well. So, you kind of got to balance the books here. Matter of fact, I'm watching it right now, the Kenosha police officers on TV. I'm watching the news right now. I think that situation with the gentleman, as a police officer, I would have shot him. And a lot of people don't like that, what I say, but I got to protect my life.
Yeah.
This guy had a knife in his hand. They showed the video and they played the 911 call and everybody shut up. You see that? They played it right away.
Yeah.
They showed him with a knife in his hand. He walked to his car and he grabbed at something to turn around to shoot, to stab the police officer. What is he going to do? He has to protect himself.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, it's just a reality that there is evil in the world, and there are people who, as you know, there are people who predate, victimize their communities and in their own families, and often too, and this is a continual problem, and society has to have some means of meeting those challenges, I guess, and it's a difficult. If people are forming gangs and extortion and taking money from people and selling heroin, in where people live, that's going to have repercussions, and that's and it sounds like you've experienced all of this. You know what's going on. I mean, to have worked in medical, in trauma units, and worked in police departments and in music, you know what's going on. So,
well, I mean, I still have friends that are, get former gangbangers and
that's interesting.
Drug dealers. They're all old men now. They're all old men now, and the gangs that they were in don't even exist.
Oh, that's interesting.
But they still know me. They call me Rat. My nickname is Rat from the streets, and I look at them and I'm still their friends, Nothing's changed. I'm still their friend. I still love them because we came up together. We grew up in the streets together.
Sure.
So I'm no better than you than me,
Oh, absolutely.
But I just have a career.
Yeah.
That's my career in medicine. That's my career as a cop. Mm. They know I was a cop. They still say, "You're still a cop?" I said, "No, man, I retired." "No, you're still a cop." "I'm still your friend. How about that?" Yeah. And that's what they can, associate with.
Yeah.
And not to change, my personality, because I'm jovial. Yeah. I'm very happy. I'm just as aggressive as I used to be.
Yeah.
But I'm still their friend. I still love them.
Sure.
And you can see it in their eyes. I can go to the store on the west side, south side, because I did home health nursing for 25 years. Mm. They still remember me. "Hey, Doc, you still?" "Yeah, I'm still." "Hey, Doc, you still work at the jail?" I'm like, "Who is this guy?" "No, I stopped going there in 95. Look, people who remember me when I was a nurse at the jail for 4 years, they still remember that person. I would play ball in the yard with the inmates and lift weights. I didn't care. I'm out there playing with my family. So,
Well, hearing you talk about all this, when this virus lifts, I'm going to come visit you in Chicago, and we got to hang out and maybe even play music together or do something.
Definitely, man. We definitely will.
Yeah, we got to do that, and I guess God willing, and we will plan on that.
I definitely will. I'll be available.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your life on my podcast, and it means a lot.
Anytime.
So I hate saying goodbye, but as it comes a time in all communications when you got to say goodbye, is there anything you want to add to the audience or that you want to say before you go?
Basically, I want to just put it out there. Keep the faith, man. Everybody's going through the same crisis. You got to put your trust in God. Basically, you have to push every day, man. Tell your family you love them. Tell your children you love them every day. Tell your mother, if she's still on earth, you love her immensely. Tell your brother, not my brother biologically, but tell your brother next to you, you love them. But my shout outs to my family, my producer, John King. And can I put some shout outs there?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That's John King, my producer from God, I'm sorry. Christy Tate from Chicago Med. She's my actress that's in my videos. Some of my closest friends, Ryan Davis, Bill Winston Ministries, Reverend Sykes, my Masonic Temple when I used to be a Mason, 941. Let's see. I just got like I said, my entire family, Dr. Borges Soya, Dr. Robert Jordan, he was my pediatric doctor that I trained with. Drew Sador, she's an actress. Allison Jordan. My medical school, IUHS School of Medicine, that were behind me since day one. And Paige Stewart and Dr. Andrew Mary.
Wow.
I'm almost done here. My sons, Ryan, Andrew, and Joshua Ratliff, Captain Mama, Jody the Mama, Baby Mama, Derek Brown from B103, Tiffany Mitchell, James Perkins, Kevon Smith from Island Records. Let's see, I got a couple more. Let's see, James Hamilton, he's a friend of mine, did my first CD with me. The late Billy Davenport from the Paul Battlefield Blues Band, Mike Wallace, Clyde Davis, Lamar Jones, Joe Thomas. If I can't fit all these guys in, Swan, Paris Holly, Chief Cotton, my video, Impact Family Center, Marsha Eaglin, Matthew, the First Baptist Church, Second Baptist Church, the Reverend Marvin Wiley, and that should be the end of my list, my man. I appreciate everything you've done.
You could have said more names if you wanted to, but that's a good list. I heard some familiar names in there, and I want to thank you, Dr. Ratliff, for this conversation. And
thank you very much. It's an honor, man.
Thank you. I will see you. Bye-bye.
All right, have a great one. God bless. Bye-bye.
I don't like goodbyes, so I'll see you soon, folks. Thank you.